Microsoft's boss, Phil Spencer, right? Oh, that's weird. Says that jacking up video game prices can end up being manipulative. Yeah. And again, before I even hop into this, like I said previously, I've got an article, another article. Let's be very clear here. I have a new article coming out from under Capcom regarding them talking once again about raising prices on us once again. So, I talk a lot about, people needing to be fairly careful about this sentiment. Prices have continued to raise on us. It just hasn't been as blatant as the off-the-shelf retail prices are starting to become. They've been raising prices on us in the industry for a long time through lots of different monetization, in-game monetization mechanics and tactics, employees and things like that. So they'll, a lot of developers will release a game, and then 2 months later, all of a sudden there's there's DLC that costs half as much as the game did. That content was ready for the game on release, but rather than add that into the game as something that probably should have been there, they make you pay $30 more for it or whatever. Then you've got microtransaction shops, and you've got battle passes, and you name it. The list goes on and on and on, right? So it's not like we haven't had the prices raised on us in the industry for quite some time anyways. But now we are seeing, and like we saw over the past year, prices of retail games went up from $60 to $70. And people wanted to try to argue that, the prices of games hadn't gone up in how many years, right? But when you take into account things like what they had been doing to us, many of these publishers and developers had been doing to us to get their extra money, they didn't need to, right? Now, here's the other thing that we're starting to notice in the industry. Many layoffs, right? Numerous layoffs. And as well as, what has been done to us for so long in the industry anyways is, are we getting what we're being promised content-wise on the release of a game? Are we getting a finished product for a game on release? Because quite often that's not the case either. Yeah. So, as I prompt people to do all the time, are you paying attention to these developers and publishers? And, do you know the ones that you can trust? So are you paying attention to who's releasing the games that you're purchasing? Or are you just going about it willy-nilly? Because we're the only ones that can protect ourselves from what's going on here. We don't have any kind of regulatory committees and governing bodies that are standing up for us and holding these companies accountable for releasing broken-ass, unfinished products, baiting us into buying things they promise without fulfilling those promises, things like that, right? Reject, what's up, buddy? And, this also comes down to, we're paying now $70 retail for AAA games, right? And are you getting your money's worth out of that purchase? That's really what this comes down to. Can you be quite sure that you're getting your money's worth out of these games? And that's just the base edition. Then you've got the deluxe editions or legendary editions or whatever, where you're buying 3 days of early access so you can be a final beta tester, right? Which is absolutely not worth it, but people still do it. How much entertainment are you really going to be getting out of this game that you're spending that much money on? That's something people need to take a hard look at as well. If you're planning on getting 100 plus hours out, dude, I think that's absolutely worth. I would say even 40 to 50 hours, probably pretty worth, depending on the content, depending on how good it is. Usually if you're getting 40 to 50 hours out of a game, you enjoy it enough that it's going to be worth that amount of money. But you take games that have been coming out, and I'm not going to bag on the fact that Insomniac makes really good content, but is 15 hours of main storyline in Spider-Man 2 worth $70? I wouldn't think so. I know that you can squeeze out probably another 10 hours of gameplay in that game from side quest stuff, whatever. But is it worth that? Is it worth $70? for that limited amount of gameplay, everybody's going to feel different. That's what you have to start asking yourself. Now we're talking about games getting even more expensive. So I think it becomes more and more critical that people start taking a hard look at how much is your money worth? How much are these products bringing to the table for you, entertainment-wise, for how much you're spending on them? And especially, again, how good are these companies bringing you these products? How good are they historically at bringing you the content they're promising and finished products, right? If they're not, you definitely shouldn't be buying day one. You shouldn't be pre-ordering until you get a look at how the game's performing on release. If they've shown you they'll do you wrong in the past, they'll do it again. It happens all the time, right? And so it's nice to hear somebody like Phil Spencer come up with a sentiment like, jacking up video game prices can end up being manipulative, because it absolutely can be. I'm all about paying for, solid content, paying for solid amounts of really good quality gaming entertainment. But I don't feel like most of the time we're getting what we're paying for. I feel like most of the time we're getting scammed. It feels that way quite often. I can't be the only one either. I know I'm not. We talk about it a lot, right? So let's see what Phil Spencer had to say here. So Xbox games may be more expensive now, but Microsoft's gaming CEO realizes there is a limit to how much gamers will take. Last year, Xbox jacked up the price of its video games from $60, once the standard in the gaming market, to $70 each. We've raised the price of games. Phil Spencer, the CEO of Microsoft Gaming, told GameFile, a newsletter focused on the business of gaming. Quote, "We went through COVID. We found ways of getting more money per player," he continued. "I think at some point you reach a peak on that, and frankly, it can go to some places that are manipulative that I'm not a big fan of." Spencer also said Xbox and other hardware developers aren't bringing in enough new customers. "I don't think we're doing a good enough job finding new players," Spencer said. "Let's pick consoles as a good example. We found 200 million global households that will play console games. That number really hasn't changed in the last 5 to 6 years. The solution: search for new customers by making Xbox's games more accessible," the CEO said. Xbox has taken steps forward toward that goal by making its titles available on phones, smart TVs, and tablets without the need for a console. Microsoft has also released new, cheaper consoles like the $300 Series S. Again, if you're not aware, Microsoft literally makes no money on their consoles, right? They make like $20, I think, on the Series S. They lose about the same amount on their Series X, something to that effect, I think. I might have it backwards, but I think that's how that works. They literally basically break even. Their hardware is just about getting people into their platform. Spencer reached through Microsoft Gaming, didn't immediately respond to Business Insider's request for comment. Back in December of 2022, Microsoft told The Verge that it would be raising prices to reflect the content, scale, and technical complexity of these titles. But one analyst said gaming advancements don't explain the full price hike. It's not only just due to complexity, but increased salaries for programmers and creatives in general. Now, here's the thing. As I spoke about before, I'm going to stop for a moment. As I spoke about with Capcom in this article that I'm going to have coming up regarding Capcom wanting to raise prices again, if part of the price is, if we could get a solid confirmation that moving forward, one of the reasons that prices were going up in the industry were for better content, more content, and for taking care of employees, not having to deal with the incredibly disgusting amount of layoffs happening in the industry right now, it's a little bit easier to swallow, isn't it? But we saw a price hike over the last year, and what's happened? The employee base, right, of the industry is getting slaughtered. So I'm sorry if I'm not, not sorry, that I'm not going to believe that these companies wanting to raise prices again are not going to be putting that money towards helping retain workforce, right? Seems a lot more like They're going to be using that money to pad the fat pockets of executives. So we've done it. We've raised prices over the past year and a half of AAA games to $70. And what has happened? The workforce is getting obliterated. So what are we supposed to think? If you raise it again, it's automatically going to fix anything? No, we've seen it. We've seen you raise prices, and we've seen you what's happened in conjunction with that. You didn't take care of your employees. You fired everybody. As tech companies and Hollywood and video game companies are fighting for a lot of the same talent, Neil Macker, a former analyst at Morningstar, told Marketplace last year, Xbox has now joined the ranks of Nintendo, Sony, Ubi, and Take-Two in raising the price of games to $70 from the decades-long industry standard. Already, some customers aren't happy. Skull and Bones. An action-adventure game for the PlayStation 5 and Xbox consoles got some flack for charging $70 for its highly anticipated game. Ubisoft, the company behind the pirate video game, defended the price because it was a, quote, quadruple A game. Yeah, we talked about this. I've got an article up about this. This was Yves Guillemot, right, defending the $70 price tag of this game, calling it a quadruple A game. There's your link in chat right there if you haven't seen that yet. We covered this. That was actual comedy. That was comedy. Here's the thing. For a game, Skull and Bones, and I'll bring up another example here too. Skull and Bones is a game that had been in development for 11 years. Right? 11 years. And they stuck to this project. They did not want to scrap it. And I'm sure that this project, Skull and Bones, cost them a significant amount of development money, right? Along with how much they put into it for, marketing and trying to build hype around it, and, stuff like that. So most AAA games nowadays have as much into the marketing side as they do even the development side. And 11 years of sinking money into a game, I'm sure that they went, we've got to charge $70 for this. But to call it a quadruple A game, sorry. Yeah. So at 11 years in development, this game should have been blowing people's minds. And instead, it was just sinking everybody's ships, if you will. You know what I mean? So, this is a game that I informed everybody they should be very, very careful about. Anytime, this game had a very tumultuous development process. The project itself was just riddled with issues we were constantly hearing about. Obviously, it took 11 years to get it out. It had almost 10 delays for its release. That there's so many red flags about you should not be buying into a game that has this many issues in its project, right? It's just that's the way. And especially when you've got these games, there are a lot of games coming out now that are being touted as a game as a service, right? It's a game as a service. But ultimately, these games that are being touted as a game as a service are already riddled with monetization. Take Suicide Squad, for example. It felt terrible to see a studio like Rocksteady that so many people had fallen in love with because of the Batman Arkham games try to do the same thing, right? $70 price tag, $100 to be a final beta tester and get into that game 3 days early where the servers didn't even work. And we knew that it would just, and they're like, oh, this is going to be a game for the long haul. If it's going to be a game for the long haul, you should be worried more about getting people into the game and playing the game. If you're going to have that much monetization in it, if the game's good, it'll survive and it'll be lucrative, right? We knew the game wasn't going to be good. We knew the game wasn't going to be fantastic, right? They wouldn't even give out review copies of the game to review sites because obviously there's only one reason why that would happen. They knew the reviews would be bad for it, which would keep people from buying it. This is the problem. These games keep coming out as, and game as a service is like the trend word. Really, it's just a live service game. Yeah. But there are identifiers and indicators about what is going to make a pretty solid live service game and what's going to be probably a pretty subpar one. And we see this happen a lot, especially these games that come out and they're like, oh, it's a quadruple A game. It's, you know, it's going to be here for the long haul. And it's, you know, this is going to be fantastic. And, but it's still riddled with monetization and stuff like that. They're not worried about getting people into the game player base wise, building a substantial, you know, fan base and player base around this game to sustain it long term. What they care about is how many people buy it initially, and as long as it you know, it's something like this, dude, I'm willing to bet you Ubi at this point with this project, they were like, we've got to get it out, we've got to recoup our expenses off of this title. We committed to it. We've got to recoup those expenses. If they break even, they're probably going to be happy. I doubt they're really, you know, looking for this game to make a long-lasting impact and continue to work on this. I would be very, very surprised if it ends up doing anything long-term. This is the stuff that we get baited into, though, on the constant, and people have to be very careful about this. Traditionally, big studio games are labeled AAA to signal their high budgets. While gaming companies are charging more, they're also cutting costs. Last month, Microsoft announced it would cut 1,900 workers across its gaming subsidiaries like Xbox, Activision Blizzard, and ZeniMax to help create a sustainable cost structure, according to an internal memo obtained by The Verge. Yeah, I mean, look, man. Again, what I'll say lastly about this is, if we saw this industry trending in the right direction as far as taking care of us as consumers, taking care of the employees that are really the ones that make the magic happen here, then we probably wouldn't be too bent about prices going up occasionally, you know, but that's not the case. That's not what's happening. It's actually, it feels like the exact opposite. Guys, just be careful, man. That's all I got to say about it. I know I rant about this stuff a lot, but god dang, dude. I mean, it feels like we're getting railroaded all the time. There are very, very smart people in this industry, especially on the business side of it. They know what they're doing. They know what they can get away with in just baiting us to buy crap products, man. It happens all the time, and it'll continue to happen until we quit buying into it. That's literally... That's it. That's all there is to it.